Hey Quilters, this is Sarah from Snugglebug Stitching, and for the video today we're going to be starting a new segment that I'm just going to call it Quilt Tour. So a while ago, almost a year ago, I got a request in a comment on a YouTube video asking about doing a quilt tour. And while that idea is fun, it sounds fun, I immediately liked the idea. It's also kind of overwhelming because I have made, I lost count, but somewhere between 200 and 300 quilts. And while a lot of those are gone, they are either been sold away or gifted away. I don't have them anymore. I still have a whole lot of quilts in my house. So a quilt tour would need to be divided into a bunch of videos and categories, a lot of the categories would overlap. It would take several. So recently I was watching a video by my friend Melanie from Southern Charm Quilts, and she was showing a quilt, a rescue quilt that she was working on. And something she said kind of got me motivated to make this first quilt tour video. You can see my stack of quilts here for the video. So what she said was sometimes growth just kind of comes out of nowhere. And that kind of got me thinking about quilting and a specific design that I use a lot now, but something that didn't work out so well the first time I tried it, and that is Paisleys. So just a fair warning here. This particular quilt tour, we're going to be talking about Paisleys, but it's kind of wrapped up in a pep talk. So I won't show you a tutorial on Paisleys. I do have one of those. I'll link it in the description so you can look at it if you want to. But we're just going to go through some quilts that I have in my possession now that I used Paisleys for. And I'll kind of show you where I started with those and go through some of the newer quilts as to what those look like now. And we'll also talk a little bit about each quilt, why I made it, what it was for. Some of these quilts in this stack are my own design, and looks like in this stack only one of them is not my own design. Actually, two of them are not my own design. So some of these quilts are my own design, and some are designed by other people. So I can link to where you can find those other designs in the description as well. So let's get started and look at some of these quilts. So this quilt is framed pinwheels. This design is from Missouri Star Quilt Company. I think I watched one of their YouTube videos for this design, and this is the first attempt I made at Paisleys. So let's just kind of look at these. So I used this bright yellow thread to quilt this. I think this is called Real Yellow from Missouri Star. So you can see, starting out, these do sort of look like Paisleys. I was trying to figure out how to make Paisleys, and they do sort of look like Paisleys. But the more I worked on this quilt, the less they look like Paisleys. So you can see here, that sort of looks like a Paisley, but it's not really. It's not really a good transition between the one before it and this one. And the more I started working on this, my hands kind of wanted to just meander and echo. So it moved into this other design here that I don't know really what you would call it. It kind of looks like peacock feathers to me for whatever reason. When I first showed pictures of this quilt, I was calling it a weird meandering Paisley-ish design. So it did not do what I wanted to do, no matter what I was trying for whatever reason. The more I was working on this, my hands wanted to do something else. So I just went with it. This was not made for a client. I actually made this quilt. I picked out all the fabrics myself and made this quilt with the idea that I wanted it to be the first quilt I had made for myself. This was in January of 2021 when I made this one. I was still working full time at the time. plus having a side gig, and my side gig had kind of got busier, all the COVID stuff. So I really just wanted something to make for myself, and this was going to be it. I did not succeed. The little snuggle bug, my son promptly claimed this quilt for his. He uses it every time he's in the living room. I have several pictures scattered out through my Instagram and on my blog where he has stolen the quilt. You can see him laying on the couch with the quilt. So did not succeed with my Paisleys, and I did not succeed in making myself my own quilt. Okay, so number 2 in our tour stop today. This is one of the cover quilts for my Pumpkins and Patches quilt. Pumpkins and Patches was the first pattern that I ever wrote. I wrote this pattern as a 40th birthday present to myself. And when I was laying it out, I realized I had several layout options. So I showed 3 layout options to my mom, my sister, and my daughter, and my husband. So 3 layout options, 4 votes. You would think that that's not going to end in a tie, right? So I had 1 vote for each layout option from my mom, my sister, and my daughter. And my husband voted for I don't care. I swear I'm going to make a pattern called I don't care one day and say it's named after him. But anyway, I couldn't decide which layout to use, so I used them all, and this is one of those layouts. So for this one, at this point, I had decided I don't care that I can't do Paisleys. I'm not going to do Paisleys, and I'm just going to use this weird, meandering Paisley-ish design that my hands just seem to want to do. So I embraced that design for this quilt, and I actually like this design. It's a cool design to use. It sort of looks like a double loop or something. So I like this double loop, peacock feather, weird, meandering, Paisley-ish design, whatever you want to call it. I like it, and I've used it for some quilts. So here is the quilt that I made completely using that design. And you can see I used the same thread. That's the Real Yellow from Missouri Star Quilt Company. So this particular quilt, I had 3 layouts of the pumpkins and patches. This particular one, I always said that the colors in this one reminded me of fall in Alabama. So it's obviously a fall quilt. It's got pumpkins on it. And the colors with like the greens and the yellows, they go well with the orange, but they don't really look like fall. They, to me, look more like summer, sort of like how Alabama fall often looks more like summer. So I always called this color scheme fall in Alabama. In the back, I've got some pretty fall fabric that, looks clearly fall. And then this binding is just a flannel that I had in my stash that I decided to use for the binding. So there is number 2 in our stop. Okay, number 3 in our Paisleys stop. This quilt is not one of my own designs. This design is Attic Window by Melanie from Southern Charm Quilts. I actually tested this pattern for her, and this pattern is in her book A Life of Quilts. This was the first quilt she made, so I pattern tested this one for her, and I actually got this fabric bundle from her as well. She has a lot of really cool bundles if you want to check those out, and I'll link to her shop in the description. But let's just have a look at my Paisleys. So for this one, I had kind of previously given up on Paisleys just for no reason, just because like I decided that my hands wanted to do something different. I'd start out doing Paisleys and it would turn into something else. But for this one, I decided that I was going to try again. And this kind of goes back to that growth kind of comes out of nowhere, because I had some 2 full quilts worth of, what I would call failed attempts to make Paisleys. Now, those quilts weren't fails because I do like both of those quilts, and I do like that weird design that kind of happened when I was not succeeding at Paisleys. But the attempt to make Paisleys itself was definitely a fail, in my opinion. So this is one where I decided I was going to try it again. And the growth kind of came out of nowhere because, like, I was able to do it this time. And I'm not saying these are perfect, but these actually, in my opinion, do look like Paisleys. Now, Paisleys and feathers Um, I feel like they're different because Paisleys, I didn't quilt a spine and make the base, the design off of that like you would with feathers. I just started quilting and filled up all the space with the design. So the design's kind of all over the place. It's not this is this is all done on a domestic machine. So there's no computerized look. All of the Paisleys look a little bit different, and I have some other quilts where I've used a different color thread where you can actually see them better. But this I think was probably my first successful attempt at Paisleys. And then when it was done, I decided to add this binding here, and that's just a decorative stitch on the binding. But I decided to add this binding here that just something I had in my stash that I felt like went with it. And then I really always kind of envisioned the backing to this one when I was putting it together in like a gold, but maybe not as dark a gold as I had in the front. So that's why I chose this backing here and just a cute little label. You can buy these labels at her shop to go with all the quilts in this book. So this is the result of me trying something that I had kind of previously admitted defeat with. And here we have it. This one looks a lot better. This is kind of how I envisioned the Paisleys in the first place. So there's the pep talk. Just because you failed something before doesn't mean that you're not ever going to be able to get it. And so moving right along in our tour, the next stop is this quilt here, my first quilt to ever be featured in a magazine. So this magazine that this is in is issue number 35 of Simply Modern. And I have not written the pattern up yet, but I am soon. It's in this Simply Modern issue number 35. So if you can get your hands on that, good luck. You can have the instructions for this one. Unfortunately, Quilt Mania is not in print anymore, so you may have a hard time getting that particular issue, but I will be releasing this as a pattern soon using some really pretty Benartex fabric for the cover. But anyway, this one was my first quilt to ever be featured in a magazine. This one got to go to France for the photo shoot in that picture I just showed you. And so, I had one successful attempt at Paisleys, so I arrogantly or maybe naively decided to try Paisleys in a quilt that I was putting in a magazine and my magazine debut at that. So, maybe that wasn't the best thought out plan, but I did it and I feel like it worked out. So here we are. So let's just have a look. You can see some decent looking Paisleys again, which is a big difference in that first quilt I showed you. But this quilt is, always going to be one of my favorites just because my first magazine quilt. And the pattern, the fabric in this, it's just got like a white on white print that I had at the house. And the foreground is all from Sharon Holland. So really pretty fabric here. And one of my favorite quilts. It's in my living room in the snuggle rotation. I almost dropped my phone. Sorry, guys. It's in the living room in my snuggle rotation. And just another, fairly successful, obviously I'm not perfect, but fairly successful attempt at Paisleys, which was a design that did not go so well the first time I tried it. All right, so here we have my Sew Diamond quilt. This is my own design. I do have this pattern available in my shop if you want to check it out. But all this is Bernina exclusive fabric by Benartex. And I really like this quilt. It's kind of got a little special place in my heart because this quilt was hanging at a Bernina event at Bernina University in June of 2024. This quilt was in Benartex's booth. So I really like this one because of that. Um, this quilt, see, that's super cute. Sewing machine fabric. Had a special label made for this one. You can see it right there. And at this point, I had kind of gotten to the point where if I ever wanted a quilt to kind of look fancy and just have a lot of quilting, Paisleys was one of my go-tos for that. That and swirls, which we'll talk about swirls in a different tour. But you can see the Paisleys are starting to look a little better and travel more. I say travel more, have a little bit more movement and size variation. This is all domestic machine quilted, so it's not programmed. So all the Paisleys are going to look a little bit different, but they just give a nice look to the quilt. Lots of quilting and lots of texture. And the more you do it, the better you get. You may have a big jump in growth like I did, but the more you do it, the more confident you get with it and the better you get. This one is my take on Grandma's Flower Garden. It was featured in the summer 2025 issue of Quilter's World. You can see their lovely photo here. And let me just show you their other photo, just because they're better at the photos than me. So you can see that gorgeous picture that they took there. So this particular quilt, I've got the Grandma's Flower Garden, the flower pieces kind of appliqued to each block. So the idea of appliquing the flower pieces to a block is pretty classic. But what I did here was come up with a way that you can do this without having to do any hand stitching. So if you want to see that technique, it is in the summer 2025 version of Quilter's World. And so look that up. There's lots of other cool patterns in that magazine as well. So all the fabrics for this one are from Benartex. The foreground is Color Sunshine. We've also got most of the binding and the backing are also from Color Sunshine. And then this background, I'm going to get kind of close to it so you can see this is a really pretty white on white. So it's a scrappy white on white background, and that is all also from Benartex. It is classic keepsakes in white, and I used a few pieces of that for the binding. So I used a scrappy binding for this. I love scrappy binding. So you can kind of see right there where the binding connects, and then this part up here, you can see it too. So you can see here a bunch of different pieces for the binding. So I just used pieces that I had left over from the quilt into a scrappy binding. And here we got a really pretty label. I just want to show you this. I get these labels from Melanie at Southern Charm Quilts. She makes these custom for me. This is my logo label. I use that a lot. And sometimes I get labels made for specific designs like I showed you with the So Diamond quilt. So let's just get right into it with the Paisleys now. So for this one, I used a blue thread, a light blue thread. I like to use colorful thread a lot, and when I do, it's usually like light blue or pink or yellow. So it's a subtle color, but looks, it's blendy, but you can see it a little bit too. So I like to use subtle colors when I use colorful thread. Now every now and then I'll just get the idea to use purple, but for here we've got a really subtle blue color for the Paisleys. And these Paisleys, just going back to how if I want it to look fancy or just want to do a lot of quilting and add lots of texture, Paisleys is kind of one of my go-to. And by this one, I was, pretty comfortable with them. Well, they're not perfect for sure, but I'm been consistently able to make Paisleys and get my hands to cooperate instead of those peacock feather designs that I was doing at first. So the point is, don't give up, keep trying. And there's one more quilt. I don't have it in my possession right now, but I'm going to show you some pictures of it and talk about it just a little bit because it's one of my favorites that I've done with Paisleys. So the last quilt in the Paisley tour, this is my Rella's Diamonds quilt. And this is actually the first pattern that was commissioned by Benartex to use for their free patterns. Benartex is very generous by providing free patterns with all of their new fabric lines, and this is the first one that I got to write for them. And I do have a blog post where I talk about why I chose to submit this particular design, why I like this particular fabric line so much with the design, and a little bit about the name, Who's Rella. But anyway, this fabric is Gratitude and Grace by Pat Sloan. I love it. It's so pretty. I love this fabric line. And I actually got to be in Pat's virtual fabric tour, her video for that on YouTube. So I wanted this quilt to look kind of fancy and have lots of texture, so I chose Paisleys. And for this one, I used a dark blue thread for the Paisleys. I don't have this quilt in my possession anymore. I gave it to my mom for Christmas, so we'll just have to look at a picture of this one. But you can kind of see the Paisleys pretty well here. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. You can see those Paisleys, how they are flowing a little bit better, I feel like. And they do get easier and easier to do. It becomes more natural to your hands, even though the first time I tried this did not go so well. So that's just kind of a reminder that if something doesn't work as well the first time, go ahead and try again. Messing up the Paisleys in that first quilt did not hurt anyone. I did find a new design out of it. So just keep trying. You can do this. And next segment I'll probably do for the quilt tour will probably be spirals. So I hope you'll watch them. And just a reminder, I do have links to the different designs in the description and some of the stuff that I talked about in the video in the description if you want to check that out.